Okay. My regards to all of you and best wishes to all of you. Today we are discussing about three subjects. One is the Civil Procedure Code 1908 and the other is the Indian Evidence Act 1872 and the Andhra Pradesh Civil Rules of Practice and Circular Orders 1980. In order to understand what are the pleadings, what are called pleadings and what the law says about them. In order to know about pleadings, we must know first of all the circumstances when these acts are passed. In the year 1872, the Indian Evidence Act is passed. In the year 1908, Civil Procedure Code is passed. So, during these 2 years, when these acts are passed, these two laws are passed, we were not having freedom. There was English rule of law. So, we have to understand why and how these laws are made. Keep this only in your mind. Then this Civil Rules of Practice is made in 1980. In 1980, by which date already Andhra Pradesh state is formed. Prior to framing Andhra Pradesh state, the area of Andhra Pradesh state now is part of Tamil Nadu. Okay, Tamil Nadu state. So after we have become independent and separate state is formed in the year 1980, this Civil Rules of Practice is prepared in ROC number 22/SO/69. I am reading an important, the first sentence in the Andhra Pradesh Civil Rules of Practice and Circular Orders 1980. What is it? Whereas it is expedient to amend, consolidate and bring up to date the Civil Rules of Practice and Circular Orders 1905. This is very important. In 1905 itself, okay, there was a Civil Rules of Practice and Circular Orders. Procedural rules were there. Okay, in order to amend, consolidate that particular rules and to incorporate therein the circular orders and administrative instructions issued from time to time for the guidance of all the subordinate civil courts in the state of Andhra Pradesh, except the Court of Small Causes, these new rules of the year 1980 are made. So, you have to understand that the new rules of practice has come into force after this Civil Rules of Practice law is passed in the year 1980 in pursuance of ROC number 22/SO/69. You may ask, sir, already Civil Procedure Code is there, Constitution is there, Evidence Act is there, why the Civil Rules of Practice? And where is the power for the High Court to frame these Civil Rules of Practice and what is the use of Civil Rules of Practice? Section 126 of Code of Civil Procedure Code 1908 and Article 227 of the Constitution, they are giving powers to Honorable High Court to prepare and make Civil Rules of Practice for the procedure to be followed in the legal system. So with that power, the then state government At that time, combined state of Andhra Pradesh was there. That has passed this particular act called as the Andhra Pradesh Civil Rules of Practice and Circular Orders 1980. Whereas in the Evidence Act, Indian Evidence Act and Civil Procedure Code, and also on certain occasions in Civil Rules of Practice also, there are some amendments which are carried out. With this, now with this background, we have to understand now Code of Civil Procedure. The Code of Civil Procedure, as I already stated, in the year 1980, it is passed. This has come into force in the year 1909. At that time, this law has come into force only for India except the state of Nagaland and the tribal areas. By giving a opportunity or the power to that particular state of Nagaland to adopt it or make necessary amendments in that regard. Now later, what has happened? 1908 we are speaking. Later what has happened? Jammu and Kashmir state has become part of India. So again another rule has come. It is not applicable to Jammu and Kashmir and state of Nagaland and tribal areas. What are the tribal areas? Assam and some other areas. Amidivir Islands are there. Hello? In relation to Amidivir Islands and the East Godavari, West Godavari and Visakhapatnam agencies in the state of Andhra Pradesh and the Union Territory of Lakshadweep, the application of the code shall be without prejudice to the application of any rule or regulation for the time being in such force in such islands, agencies or such union territory as the case may be. This is what I am very much interested to tell to you. You are all, most of them are from Visakhapatnam. In Visakhapatnam, CPC was not applicable till that time. When CPC is made applicable, East Godavari, West Godavari and Visakhapatnam and agencies in the some of the parts of state of Andhra Pradesh, there were already some rules, regulations which were in force. They are also made part of the CPC. This is the what background I want to tell to all of you. With this background, now we will go directly to the pleadings part. What are the orders which are important? The orders important you can note down. Of course, I am going to give you this audio, but you can note down that order 7 is going to directly deal with the provision called deal with the pleadings. Order 7. Please note down. Order 7. Rule 1. Order 7. Rule 1. It is better to understand first order 6, then go for order 7. So I will go to order 6 and thereafter we will read order 7. 6 and 7 both are important. So first we will read order 6. In order 6, how many rules are there? I think you must not have read. Only 18 rules are there in order 6. In order 7, how many are there in order 7? There are also 18 rules, but some of them are deleted. in order 7. Now I am reading order 6. Order 6. Pleading shall mean, order 6 rule 1. Pleading shall mean plaint or written statement. Pleading shall mean plaint or written statement. What about the other supplemental proceedings? Are they not pleadings? Are they pleadings or not? This is important question. We will understand due course of time whether supplemental proceedings are also pleadings or not, and why order 7, order 6 rule 1 says pleading shall mean plaint or written statement. Only these two are called as pleadings. The other are not pleadings as per order 7, order 6 rule 1. But we discussed till some time back, even written statement filed by the plaintiff and the additional written statement filed by the defendant are also called as supplemental pleadings. We will go through it. Later on I will tell you. Order 6 rule 2 says pleading to state material facts and not evidence. You know very well, you can understand this. Only material facts and not evidence to be pleaded in the plaint. And pleading shall, whenever necessary, every pleading, paragraphs numbered like that. Order 6 rule 3 is important. What it says? It says form of pleading, how it should be as per appendix A. So appendix A, you must go and see in appendix A what is the form in which you have to prepare your plaint or written statement. Unless and until we know the forms which are prescribed in appendix A, we can't prepare a plaint. So what it says, the forms in appendix A, when applicable and where they are not applicable, forms of the like character as nearly as may be shall be used for all pleadings. So first you must see what is the form required to be prepared for the purpose of preparing your plaint or written statement. If the same is useful to you, you can use it. Otherwise, you can make some modifications. Not like your college application. You have to fill and give it. It's not like that. Go to appendix A, look at the forms, select a form, and if it is required to be modified, you can modify and say that it is your plaint. Likewise, order 6 rule 3A says if the case is relating to commercial courts. What are the commercial courts? There are certain commercial courts, they deal with only about like arising out of the cause of action in relation to commercial transactions, or sometimes bank transactions also. They will be referred as commercial courts. Then in that event, pleadings shall be in the forms in which in those commercial courts are prescribed. So there will be prescribing of forms necessary to be used for commercial courts separately, not in appendix A. So for commercial courts, again the forms which you have to adopt are not prescribed in appendix A. Then rule 4. We already discussed all these things. Okay. Order 5 to 18, 5 to 18, yesterday I gave you the paper. You can read. What is important is Order 6, Rule 16, 17, 18. Rule 16 deals with the power of the court in order to strike out the pleadings which you have made in your plaint or written statement. So whenever you, this is important, whenever you prepare any plaint or written statement, you must keep in your mind Order 6, Rule 16. Please note down. Order 6, Rule 16 is very important. It gives power to you, power to the court to order a pleading to be struck out or amended when, if it is necessary, if it is unnecessary. Suppose you write any unnecessary fact in your plaint, or scandalous, frivolous, or vexatious fact, or the facts you have pleaded cause prejudice, embarrass, or delay the fair trial of the court, or it is otherwise abuse of the process of the court, then the court will say, come on, I am striking out this pleading, or you amend and remove those pleadings. So before filing the plaint or written statement, you must consider whether, as per Order 6, Rule 16, your pleadings are in proper way. This is the first thing. Second is Order 6, Rule 17. Suppose for any reason you have not mentioned a material fact in the pleadings, either in the plaint or written statement, then if you feel that such pleadings are necessary absolutely for deciding the matter, determining the real questions in between the parties, then you can make an application to the court mentioning, I have filed the plaint due to the below reasons I could not plead some of the material facts. Please permit me to amend my plaint. Please permit me to amend my written statement. You can make an application in the court to make amendments of the plaint or written statement. Mistakes are generally happens. The client, for several reasons, could not tell you certain facts. Suppose a person may be having total information, but he failed to tell you all that what he knows, maybe out of the ignorance. Then after some time he comes and tells to you, I have some information which is necessary for deciding the disputes, real disputes in controversy between the parties. Then such facts you can put forward in your application and request the court to amend the plaint or written statement. But here one embargo is there. There is a proviso to Order 6, Rule 17. The proviso is that you are not entitled to make an application after the trial is commenced. If the court commences the trial of the matter, then you can't say, I will file this application for amendment. Court may not permit, but it permits you if you are able to prove or make the court to come to the conclusion that in spite of due diligence, you could not have raised the matter before the commencement of trial. ట్రయల్ మొదలుపెట్టేదానికి ముందల ఏ కారణాల వల్ల ఈ అమెండ్మెంట్లో చెప్పినటువంటి విషయాల్ని మీరు కోర్టుకి తెలపలేకపోయారు అనే విషయాన్ని మీరు అమెండ్మెంట్ అప్లికేషన్లో శుభ్రంగా రాస్తే అప్పుడు కోర్టు తప్పకుండా పర్మిట్ చేస్తుంది. అయితే ఈ అమెండ్మెంట్ అనేది రియల్గా రెండు పార్టీలకి మధ్యలో ఉన్నటువంటి కాంట్రవర్సీని డిసైడ్ చేసేందుకు, తీర్పిచ్చేందుకు అవసరమైనదిగా ఉండాలి. అప్పుడే అమెండ్మెంట్ అనేది పర్మిషన్ ఇస్తారన్నమాట. అదేవిధంగా ఆర్డర్ 6 రూల్ 18, దట్ ఈజ్ హౌ అండ్ వెన్ యూ హ్యావ్ టు మేక్ అమెండ్మెంట్స్. సపోజ్ ద కోర్ట్ పర్మిట్స్ ఫర్ మేకింగ్ an amendment, and then you have to necessarily, definitely must make that amendment, carry out that amendment within 14 days. So we have completed order 6. Now I am going to order 7. Order 7 says what are the details to be mentioned in the plaint. Order 7 rule 1. Order 7 rule 1 says the details to be mentioned in the plaint. Then in money suits, what is the exact amount you are entitled and required to be paid to you to be mentioned clearly. You also have to mention if it is a suit for mesne profits or some amount from out of the unsettled accounts, or for movable properties in the possession of defendant, or for debts, then approximate amount or value of the same you must mention. This is order 7 rule 2. Next, where interest is sought in the suit, then order 7 rule 2a says how you can claim the rate of interest and the date from which you are claiming, the date to which it is calculated, and the total amount of interest claimed, the daily rate at which interest accrues after that date. So, interest till the date of filing of the suit, and from the date of the suit to till the date of decree, and from the date of decree to till the payment. 3 types of dates in rate of interest. You have to necessarily clearly mention if you are praying for payment of interest. I explained to you as per order 7 rule 2, in money suits you must mention the amount you are claiming as relief clearly. If it is for unsettled amount or you are claiming for interest, then approximate amount you can mention. If it is in respect of interest, how and why you are entitled, the dates from which you are claiming, and how you calculated, all those things you have to mention. If it is about subject matter of immovable property and your suit is representative capacity or defendant's liability and interest in the matter, all other things you have to mention. Important, I will tell you, limitation. Suppose the last date of limitation, a party comes to you. He comes after the court hours. Then tells to you, sir, today is the last date, 3 years ago is going to be completed today. Then you can go to the judge's residence also. The day is calculated from night 12 to next day night 12. That means yesterday night 12 o'clock onwards till today night 12 o'clock, 1 day. Suppose he comes to you today morning or today after 5 p.m. You shall approach the court before 12 p.m. in the night. Court means the judge. Suppose court hours are over, completed. After 5 p.m. he approached you. The judge is at his residence or at his cinema hall also. You can go to the judge and request him stating, sir, today is the last date of limitation. My client was beaten by the defendant while he is coming to court or coming to my office. So I may be permitted to submit the plaint on behalf of my client to you. Likewise, we can hand over the plaint to the judge. So, for any reason, there is extension of time of period of limitation. You must clearly mention the details of the claim you are making for extending the law of limitation period. Then, if you are making your relief basing on finding on separate grounds, you must mention clearly those grounds separately one after another. Then order 9 says what is to be done after court admits the plaint. Can the court return the plaint? Definitely it is entitled to return the plaint to comply with some of the objections, like order 7 rule 10. It says when and how, where you can return the plaint. If the plaint is admitted as per order 7 rule 9, then as prescribed in the manner provided in rule 9 of order 5, it will direct the plaintiff to present as many copies of the plaint on the plaint paper as there are defendants within 7 days. Suppose the court says that your plaint is admitted, then next course is it will order you to submit the copies of the plaint and also the documents in the Nazarat. So within 7 days you have to submit the same. For what purpose? They will be sent to defendant along with the summons to be served on the defendant. So order 5 rule 9 prescribes the manner in which you have to submit the documents and other things you are relying upon along with the copies of the plaint. Then the court will order for issuing summons to the defendant, or otherwise the court will return the plaint as per order 9, order 7 rule 10, subject to provisions of order 10. Order 10A deals with about after the defendant is appeared. Also sometimes if the court finds that the plaint should be returned, it shall before doing so intimate its decision to the plaintiff. This is very important. Your plaint is admitted, court ordered summons to defendant received summons and he appeared before the court. At that time also, if the court finds that your plaint is admitted though not entitled to be admitted, then it can return the plaint to you. On returning the plaint, after numbering also, for certain reasons, you can comply with those objections and then present the plaint in proper court. Let us say you presented a plaint in a wrong court which has no jurisdiction, but the court by mistake numbered it, understanding that the court has got jurisdiction, but subsequently it has realized the same. Then what to be done? The court can order for returning of it, but it shall give notice to the plaintiff and intimate him about its order. On that, you are required to do what court ordered. Likewise, appellate court also under order 7 rule 10b has got absolute power ordering for returning of the plaint in order to comply with some of the objections of the court or to present it in proper court. To this extent, there is no any doubts, we can easily understand. But order 7 rule 11 It is a very difficult to understand this provision, because if we understand this provision, then everybody will prepare the plaint correctly, and return statement also you can prepare well. This is regarding rejection of the plaint. Order 7 empowers the court to reject the plaint due to happening of some certain aspects. First is, the plaint does not disclose a cause of action. When a plaint does not disclose a cause of action, the court is entitled to reject the plaint. Reject means you can't again file that suit. So very serious. When it can reject? If there is no cause of action. What do you mean by cause of action? For preferring the suit or filing the suit, you must have a cause due to any action of either you or the defendant. Then only you can file the suit. For any reason, after filing the suit by presenting a plaint and the numbering of it, the court has come to a conclusion that the plaint does not disclose cause of action, then it can reject your plaint. This realization by the court can be on its own, or defendant files a petition even without filing a written statement, requesting or praying the court to reject the plaint, stating that there is no cause of action properly mentioned in the plaint. So that is one provision as per which the court can reject the plaint when it doesn't disclose a cause of action. Then the second is where the relief claimed is undervalued and the plaintiff, on being required by the court to correct the valuation within a time to be fixed by the court, fails to do so. This is referring to the plaint where you all know what is the relief you are praying. As per the plaint has to be mentioned clearly in the end of the plaint. You have mentioned the prayer stating 10 lakhs is the, for example, 10 lakhs is the amount due by the defendant. But you have paid court fees only for 5 lakhs. Or by mistakenly you have mentioned the amount entitled by you is 10 lakhs, but the court for any reason felt that it is only 1 lakh and numbered the suit. Then the valuation of the suit can be properly valued basing on the relief claimed by you. After court arriving and understanding the mistakes committed by the court or by you or by defendant or by anybody, and then value the relief as per actual facts and demand you by returning the plaint to pay the balance stamp of court fee stamps. It ordered to pay the court fee stamp which you paid insufficiently, but you did not pay the court fees. Then also within time, if you don't pay the court fees ordered by the court can reject your plaint. Third is where the suit appears from the statement in the plaint to be barred by any law. Sometimes what happens, a particular type of suits are not permitted to be filed. They are barred by law. But you filed it due to ignorance, you filed, or the court due to ignorance numbered it. But later it has come to know that this type of suits are not permitted to be filed then court can say your plaint is rejected because your plaint is barred to be filed before the court due to a particular law. E is where it is not filed in duplicate. F is where the plaintiff fails to comply with Rule 9. These things you can very easily understand. That's what already I stated, that the court will order you to pay the court fees you are not paid. Order to submit the copies of the plaint as many number as there are number of defendants you did not furnish. In all those cases, you are not entitled to continue the suit and the court will reject your plaint. There is a provision provided that the time fixed by the court for the correction of valuation or supplying of the requisite stamp paper shall not be extended unless the court, for reasons to be satisfied, plaintiff was prevented by any cause of an exceptional nature from correcting the valuation or supplying the requisite stamp paper, as the case may be, within the time fixed by the court, and the refusal to extend such time would cause grave injuries to the plaintiff. Suppose 10 days time is given to you to pay the balance court fees or to submit the copies of documents or copies of the plaint or written statement. You did not do so. Again the court extended the time. Thereafter also you did not do so. Finally, you could not comply with the orders of the court and the court rejected it. Thereafter also you can file an application for extending the time, and the court may extend the time, but you have to prove the exceptional circumstances under which you did not or you could not comply with the orders of the court. Next, Order 6, Rule 12. Where a plaint rejected, the judge shall record an order to the effect with the reasons for such order. This is very important. The judges cannot, just because he doesn't like you or like the plaintiff or for any reason, reject the plaint. If he is going to reject the plaint, he has to give specific and valid reasons for the same in accordance with law. Then only he can reject the plaint. If he rejects the plaint without giving reasons, then you may approach the necessary appellate court for doing justice to you. Next, nothing in the where rejection of plaint does not preclude presentation of fresh plaint. The rejection of plaint on any of the grounds hereinafter mentioned shall not of its own force preclude the plaintiff from presenting a fresh plaint in respect of the same cause of action. This is very important. Basing on the cause of action, you file the suit. But before the court gives a decision, finally, the court returned the plaint and rejected it. You are entitled to file a fresh suit on the same cause of action. So, there are some conditions for that. Limitation should be there, or there should not be any prohibition under any law to present such sort of plaint again. Then only you can submit the plaint again. Then 14, production of document on which the plaintiff sue or relies. I already stated you what are the documents which are necessary to prove your case. You must file along with the plaint. Or sometimes there are some documents which are not within the custody of the plaintiff at the time of filing of the suit. He may explain to the court and request the time to present the documents at the appropriate time. But this rule is not applicable in respect of a document produced for the cross-examination of the plaintiff's witnesses are handed over to a witness merely to refresh his memory. This is in respect of, I am telling you about Order 14, Rule 4. You have presented plaintiff or his witnesses as the witnesses in the court. Defendant wants to put certain facts in the cross-examination as questions to your witnesses. You can't say, sir, he is showing some document. This is not already filed into court. You can't say. Such documents he can project and show it to the witness during the cross-examination. Or there are some documents just they can be shown to the witnesses to refresh his memory. Just he understands what is the question he has put. Suppose you put a question about the name of the witness. మీ పేరు ఏంటయ్యా? అతను అర్థం కావడం లేదు మీరు చెప్పిన క్వశ్చన్. మీరు అతని పేరు కలిగినటువంటి ఒక డాక్యుమెంట్ చూపించి, ఈ డాక్యుమెంట్లో ఒక పేరు ఉంది, అది చూసి ఈ డాక్యుమెంట్ ప్రకారం నీ పేరు ఏమని రాసిందో చెప్పు అని అడిగారు అనుకోండి. అదర్ సైడ్, దట్ ఈజ్ ప్లెయింటిఫ్స్ కౌన్సిల్ కెనాట్ సే, సార్ ఈ డాక్యుమెంట్ ఆల్రెడీ ఫైల్ చేయలేదు, ఈ డాక్యుమెంట్ చూపించి నా విట్నెస్ని ఎగ్జామిన్ చేయడానికి లేదు, ఈ క్వశ్చన్ అడగటానికి లేదు అని చెప్పి అలా అనటానికి లేదు. ఎందుకు? ఈ ప్రొవిజన్లో అటువంటి లిబర్టీ ఇచ్చారు. విట్నెస్ని క్రాస్ ఎగ్జామినేషన్ చేసేటప్పుడు కొన్ని డాక్యుమెంట్స్ని మీరు డైరెక్ట్గా మొట్టమొదటిసారి అప్పుడే చూపించవచ్చు, అడగచ్చు. అదేవిధంగా విట్నెస్కి కొంత మెమరీ వచ్చి గుర్తుపట్టేదానికి, క్వశ్చన్లు అర్థం చేసుకునేదానికి చూపించే డాక్యుమెంట్స్కి సంబంధించి కూడా ఈ రూల్ అప్లికబిలిటీ లేదు. రూల్ ఏంటి? డాక్యుమెంట్ ఫైల్ చేసిన, షూట్ ఫైల్ చేసిన తర్వాత, ఇష్యూస్ ఫ్రేమ్ చేసిన తర్వాత డాక్యుమెంట్స్ని వెంటనే మీరు కోర్టులో లిస్ట్ రాసి, లిస్ట్ ప్రకారం కోర్టులో ఫైల్ చేయాలి. ఆ డాక్యుమెంట్స్ని ఒక లిస్ట్ అంతా తయారు చేసి, ఒకవేళ ఏదైనా డాక్యుమెంట్ ప్లెయింటిఫ్ పొజిషన్లో లేకపోతే యూ మస్ట్ మెన్షన్ వేర్ దట్ డాక్యుమెంట్, హూ ఈజ్ హ్యావింగ్ ద పొజిషన్ ఆఫ్ దట్ document. You must explain. Suppose dependent is in position or power of a particular document, you must mention on the date of execution of a document, for the safe custody of that document, it is given to defendant or it is kept in locker. Like that you must mention as per order 7 rule 14. Otherwise court can draw adverse information and may not permit you to file and rely upon such document in future. Then order 7 rule 16, suits on last negotiable instrument. This you can understand very well, easily. Where the suit is founded upon a negotiable instrument, it is proved that the instrument is lost. మీ దగ్గరికి ఒక వ్యక్తి వచ్చి, అయ్యా నాకు డిఫెండెంట్ ఇన్స్ట్రుమెంట్ రాసిచ్చాడు, ప్రొనోట్ రాసిచ్చాడు, అది పోయింది, అండ్ indemnity is given by the plaintiff to the satisfaction of the court against the claims of any other person upon such instrument. అయితే ప్లెయింటిఫ్ ఒకటి రాసియాలి, ఇది కనుక ఎప్పుడైనా దొరికితే నేను తెచ్చి ఇవ్వగలవాడును, దీన్ని బేస్ చేసుకొని ఇంకెవరి దగ్గరైనా డబ్బులు వసూలు చేసుకుంటే దానికి నేనే బాధ్యుణ్ణి అని రాసి గనక వేస్తే ప్లెయింట్, మీరు ఆ ప్లెయింట్ని కాపీ తీసుకొని ఇన్స్ట్రుమెంట్తో పాటు మీరు ఫైల్ చేయొచ్చు కోర్టులో. ఇన్స్ట్రుమెంట్ పోయింది కదా, నువ్వు సూట్ వేయటానికి లేదు అని అనటానికి లేదు, అవసరం లేదు. యాజ్ పర్ ఆర్డర్ 7 rule 16, you can make a mention in the plaint that the plaintiff lost the pronote, and in case if he traces the same, it will be submitted to the court, and I am indemnifying myself that in case if already anybody recovers the amount due under the pronote from defendant, I am liable for the return of the payment of that amount. Then order 6 rule 17 about production of shop book, original entry to be marked and returned. You know very well. So certain documents are considered to be documents defined in the Bankers Books Evidence Act 1891. These documents are presumed to be there in existence, made as per law.